smoke to some land I ain't bought, and it's here's to you, old skinny Dennis, the only one I think I
Guy
will
Clark was an American folk and country singer and a songwriter and a maker of guitars. He was from Texas, and his career spanned from the 1970s to 2016 when he died. He mentored several other country artists, including Steve Earle and Nancy Griffiths, and he released 13 studio albums. Hi, my name's Dan. So this was Guy Clark's first album, and it's my first encounter with him. And there may be people who are astounded that I've never heard of Guy Clark before, but at least I have now. So this is part of the reason for doing these reviews, is to give me an impetus and a drive to discover stuff that I didn't know. So I would describe this as being broadly country, but leaning somewhat towards a more Americana label. Country is part of Americana anyway, in my head, but Americana is a bit of a broader description, so it includes elements of other kind of, I don't want to say traditional, but other American styles of music like blues and bluegrass and jazz and things like that. So, well, this has got elements of stuff that isn't quite country, but it's mostly, I would say, country. So I'm going to name check just quickly Emmylou Harris and Steve Earle, because both of these appear at some point on this album. They're both in the list of 25 musicians who are on this album. I don't think all 25 play at once at any point. I just think that there's a lot of different people on different tracks. But the information I had, which was Wikipedia, doesn't actually say who's where, so I wasn't able to pinpoint any of them. So I um, people who watched quite a few of my videos, and particularly have come across me listening to country, will know that I have a bit of a prejudice about country, and I'm working on it. And hearing some country albums has helped me deal with that a bit, and some of them have reinforced my prejudice, I have to say. But I told myself, I started to listen to it and go, yeah, all right, this is country. So, all right, Listen Without Prejudice, which incidentally is the name of a great album by George Michael. So I tried, and I feel fairly proud of myself in that I don't think I let my prejudice get in the way too much here. So musically, as I said, it's various forms of country and Americana, from yeehaw to somewhat mellow. There's some slide guitar, as in pedal steel guitar, but not a lot. And that's one of the things that sometimes I respond negatively to. There's some fiddle, which I usually respond positively to. There's some resophonic guitar, they specifically named dobro in the listing here. So resophonic guitars are those guitars that have kind of a metal disc on the front, and they've got a particular sound to them, and dobro is one of the mates of those. There's some harmonica, some nice harmonica, and there's quite a lot of guitar here, some of it being acoustic guitar. Musically, actually, I found it was okay most of the time. At times, actually quite enjoyable. And I've discovered, actually, I think, in my kind of exploration of why do I dislike country and why do I like some bits of it, is that actually, if it's faster, if it's a bit more kind of hoedowny or honky tonk, those kind of things, I tend to find more enjoyable. There's some on here that are like that, but even the slower ones, generally, I haven't found particularly problematic. So, for the voice, again, here's a sticking point for me sometimes. Guy Clark's voice, his voice is definitely country, but again, I didn't actually find it difficult. So why was this? So he wasn't hugely nasal. That's something that I can find difficult, not just with country, but with other voices. Um, but I came to a realization that sometimes, particularly male country voices, just come across a bit smug, I think, and he doesn't. So that's all right. So this is good. Then the third thing that I have identified in the past that I can latch onto for some country is what the song's about. Sometimes they're kind of overly emotionally manipulative, and that just turns me off. So the songs here are a mixed bag of story things. They're all very much story songs, and that is something in general that I would say is a good thing. Country definitely goes for story songs a lot. The last one I'd say was the most cringy, which is about a lady of the night from Texas. It just I mean, it's kind of spoken and it's just a little bit too much. But the rest of it, despite there being a fair amount of heartache and sad stories, it didn't feel as overly maudlin or mawkish. And he pulls it off better than some. I think it's possibly the nature of his voice. So I think there are people who can pull off that kind of more melancholy things. It's I think it's something about the feeling of genuineness, and partly that's just probably just the nature of their voices. So it's also, I think it's not laid on as thick as it is in some country albums. So, having mentioned the last track, I'm going to say "Instant Coffee Blues," which is kind of somewhere towards the end, is actually, I think, a really good song. It's a thoughtful song about the day after a one night stand, and it just kind of paints a picture of just general awkwardness in a really nice and kind of thoughtful way to say. So I'm going to pull out some other songs that I actually quite enjoyed. So Texas 1947, which is about a train. Country music about trains. Whoa, what a surprise. A Nickel for the Fiddler. I quite like that. And Rita Ballou, which is the first song. So country is still not going to be my thing. It hasn't converted me to a dyed-in-the-wool country fan, but I did try and listen with an open ear, and I think I achieved that, and I actually enjoyed it mostly. There were occasional points where my prejudice kind of spiked itself a little bit, but it didn't completely put me off. So I quite enjoyed it. And for a country album, that's something for me. That's something pretty good. So that's what I think. I'd love to know what you think of this album, and especially any country fans out there who don't share my prejudice. I'd love to know what you think of this album. And that's it from me for now.
Now he washed all the road dirt from his face and from his neck, sat down at her table. She picked up his check, and she took him home for reasons that she did not understand.